Hi, my name is Matthijs Noordzee from the University of Twente in the Netherlands, and this is a short video lecture on how to write the discussion section of a scientific article. First, I have to stress the discussion is important. For some reason, many students, when they first start writing scientific articles, they tend to kind of ignore the discussion or write it at the very end and put quite, the least effort in the discussion. And that's really a pity because the discussion is as important or maybe more important than the introduction. While what you see in many student reports that should be a scientific article, or also you still see it in bachelor thesis or master thesis, that the introduction is really long with a lot of scientific theories and concepts and definitions of all kinds of things, and the discussion is quite short. And also, many of the things that are introduced in the introduction, certain theories for example, they never return in the discussion. And this is really wrong. As a reader, you then wonder, why have I been reading about these theories if apparently the experiment that is also described in the article doesn't really test these theories? So as a rule, theories, articles, references that you use in the introduction should return in the discussion, and the length of the introduction and the discussion in most articles should be comparable. And if anything, the discussion should probably be longer. In that sense, you also have to realize that the discussion is a part where you can talk about your findings and talk about the scientific theories in the light of your addition to it, or whether your work is the same or different. So that is really the place where you can make your own unique contribution. Let's take a look at an example. I copy-pasted the start of a discussion from an article by Mundi, 2014. An example I also use in the other videos on an introduction, method and results section of a scientific article. And the way this example deals with the discussion is fairly typical and basically a good example of what you should do. First, here you see that the author paraphrases the purpose of the study and the research question and what was expected from the experiment. And subsequently, the author basically answers the research question with the results that have just been described in the results section. In addition, there's also already some comparisons to what has been suggested earlier and other findings, although there's no explicit reference here to other articles or theories that will follow in the next section. After you have answered your research question, you need to reflect on your findings in the light of other scientific work. Probably a lot of this scientific work was already mentioned in the introduction. And you can look at this from two angles or two options. On the one hand, your findings might be in line with other findings, or in other words, it corroborates it. And if this is the case, you need to discuss to what extent it is a precise replication, or, you found a somewhat similar thing but slightly different. And you could discuss to what extent your work extends other work, and to what extent existing theories can account for your findings. If existing theories need to be modified slightly to fit your findings, this would be the place to discuss this. It could also be that your findings contradict earlier work. And then you need to look at, did you do something better or more clever than the other studies? Or maybe there are two camps in the scientific world where, yes, your findings contradict one camp but are in line with the other. And Well, then again, you might then discuss how strong both of these camps are. I think one of the key words here is the word precisely. So what is different in these findings, in the experiments, and maybe also in the theories that could account for these differences? Here's an example of a paragraph in the discussion that comes from the Mundy article again. And here a new theory is introduced, a different one than the one that motivated the original hypothesis of this article. And this paragraph discusses to what extent that other theory actually also fits the current findings. The author actually argues that, well, actually this other theory could also account for the findings that are found here. So in that sense, this experiment cannot decide between the theory of Pressey and the theory of Day. But it is a nice example of a concise paragraph looking at the current findings and setting it against different theories. The final elements you should include in your discussion are a short description of possible limitations. You need to be very specific and concise about these limitations and how some problem in your experimental design or in the way the experiment was run might have caused problems that somehow limit your ability to use the data to answer your research question. And especially beginning researchers and students make the mistake of filling their discussion with only limitations. It's definitely important to be very critical on your own work, but it should not be without a clear reflection on how it impacts the ability to answer the research question. You can also talk about future or follow-up studies and some practical recommendations. And you can end with a short conclusion that should be both concise and positive. So I took an example of this. In this case, it's only one sentence of a concluding statement that kind of again emphasizes the worth or the importance of the current study. Here you see a checklist for your discussion. I would advise you to look at this checklist again after you've written your first version of your discussion section. And if you can say yes to many of these questions, you're probably well on your way to writing a good first draft of the discussion. So good luck with writing the discussion.